I have completed Satisfactory early access in the space elevator. You can see the next stage is unavailable right now. We have finished all 4 stages of the elevator. We've also completed everything in the MAM, etc. Right? So we have done a lot. I've automated all resources, made a full series on it, so don't hesitate to check it. But today, you may be completely new to the game, you may be a veteran. Having spent more than 1000 hours in the game, I think I can get you all the tips you need. Tip number 1, let's talk a bit about the beginning of the game. At the start, you won't be able to build an actual factory right away. So don't even try, right? If you're still in tier 0, you don't even have access to conveyor belts. If you're still in tier 1, you don't even have access to foundations or walls. You don't have splitters or mergers and much more. So again, don't even try. At the start, you will have to transport resources manually, so try to build everything close to each other. Right? You can have, for example, your hub over here. You can try to make a bit of copper on one side, a bit of iron on the other, right? Everything should be pretty close to each other. And then when you get to tier 3, you can delete it all and make a real factory. Tip number 2, speaking about deleting, you get all the resources back when you delete a building. So never hesitate, to destroy something, a foundation, a building, or even your hub. If we delete your hub, it is fine, you do this like this. And now in my inventory, you will see that I have the hub parts to be able to rebuild the hub somewhere else. Let's rebuild it here. So you see I'm not lying. Every single building, that's possible. And by the way, if you want to delete a couple of things at once, you can press Control, right? And with this, I can dismantle many things. I can dismantle different types of things, or if you want to make sure you only dismantle only one type of things, for example, let's say I want to only dismantle, these foundations, you're going to press G. Now the foundation filter is on. So even if I, hover over the hub or hover over here, the awesome sink or whatever, it's only taking those foundations and nothing else. And then if you want to take it out, obviously you press G again. And lastly, for this tip, I'm saying, when you delete, you get all the resources back. If really you are a beauty builder and you don't want to have to deal with resources, it is actually also possible. You go into the advanced game setting over here in gameplay, you have the no build cost, right? So basically you will have no cost to build anything. And therefore, again, if you're a beauty builder, that could be helpful. But if you are playing the game really normally, I suggest you definitely don't use it. It takes a lot of the fun away. Tip number 3. At the beginning of the game, the only way you have to make electricity is going to be the biomass burner. That's going to be for a bit, so you will never have enough biofuel to burn. You're always going to require more. So make sure that you collect all of this biofuel while walking around, while moving, from one part of your factory to another, or exploring the world. Try to collect as many biomass as possible. So these are going to be leaves, flower petals like this. It can be also wood. Let me find some wood somewhere. I don't see any wood. Where's the wood? Here. You can have wood like this. This is even better biomass. So collect it all, right? And a tip to help you collect it is when you see a leaf like this, press E and then holding E, and then you can move around. And as you can see, while moving around, it is collecting everything on the way. Right? So that way, it is really helping to get a lot of these resources quickly. You can see I have now collected already 250 in just a second. So then when you have obviously all of this, you should also try to, as quickly as possible, automate a bit the transformation of this biofuel. Right? So this is what I've done over here. For example, I have one depot for the grass, one depot for the wood. That's basically full. Right, let's put it over here. And then with those constructors, right, we're going to transform this into biomass. And there's actually even later on a second one, which is biomass to solid biofuel. Right? So with this, we're automating sort of the storage and the transformation. You don't have to do it manually. And then you can have all of your burners next to each other. In particular, because with version 1 of the game, we will be able to feed this biomass directly into the burners at some point, so you won't have to move it and do it manually. But yeah, at the beginning of the game, you're gonna need a lot of biomass, so anytime you're moving somewhere, make sure that you collect this biomass. Tip number 4, let's talk about splitters and merger, something that is really critical in any factory. As the name says, a splitter is going to split resources. There's one input, right? This is what the one input in orange, and there's three outputs, sorry. And then the same one, the mergers. This is the opposite, right? This is going to merge different one into one. In this case, this is merging 3 into 1. With those two things, you can make everything, right? You can make 1 into 5, you can make 2 into 3, you can do whatever you want, right? With a combination of mergers and splitters. But there's definitely two ways to use them. One is called the manifold, the other is called the load balancing. The manifold, this is this over here. You have basically one way, let's do it like this, right? We have the resources, and then there's one main belt, and of this main belt, you're going to have, all of your buildings. They're gonna take some resources. This is the manifold. On the other hand, I could do the same thing that we're doing over here, but more in a load balancing. Load balancing, basically the definition of load balancing is to ensure that each of these, like let's say all 3 of these, get the same thing. How does that work? Well, basically, I'm gonna have to delete a couple of things because this splitter is in the wrong way. We're gonna delete pretty much everything, sorry. I should have thought about it before. But basically, instead of having 3 splitter, in this case, it's actually super simple. We're only gonna have 1, like this, that, and now the entrance is here. So now what is happening is that the resources, instead of going on one line, they're coming here, and then they're going to split equally, right? When, let's say, there's 3 that are coming in, 1 will go there, 1 there, 1 there. Versus before, with a load balancer, what happens is that, if there is 3 that are coming, or to be more precise, 2 that are coming this side, 1 will go straight, 1 will go this side. And then again, 1 will go straight, 1 will go this side. So the manifold is actually usually a lot simpler, because what happens is you just put 1 splitter per building. Versus for the load balancing, sometimes can be very simple, like this one. But most of the time it's going to be super complex because you want to make sure that every buildings get exactly the same, and you could have very strange numbers of buildings, strange production, so it makes it usually a lot larger, more complex, takes more space. But at the same time, the good thing with load balancing like this is that each building from the start is exactly getting the same thing, so they will all start at the same time. Versus what happens with manifold is that the building that is first in the line, like this one is first versus that one, right? The resources are coming this side. This one will start right away, versus this one may actually take quite a bit of time before it starts. Because again, I need to get some resources. I mean, in the case of 2 buildings, it's not going to take that long. But when you have a manifold with, I don't know, hundreds of buildings in a line, like look at this. This is not 100, but still, it is an example of manifold where there are some buildings that are going to take a longer time to start than others, because the resources come from here. So let's assume you have 90 roads coming from this side. 30 are going to go there, 30 there, 30 there, right? But now, if you continue even further, so that means over here, it's not 30 anymore, it's only 15. Here it's only 15 again, right? And then you continue. So what happens is here you have a splitter again 3 ways, right? One this side, one this side, one that time. So we said 15. That means this one gets 5, this one gets 5, this one over here only gets 5, right? So basically, the more splitter there is, the more, the last constructor or assembler or whatever it is will get less resources until this one gets full, because obviously at some point this one may get full, and then there is more that will go this side, and then more for this one will get full, and etc, etc. So a manifold is way simpler, takes less space, but not all buildings will start at the same time. Not all buildings will reach 100% productivity at the same time. Personally, I do still suggest to do manifold 99% of the time because it's a lot simpler to organize, etc. But there is definitely some time where a load balancer is better. I mean, especially early in the game, if you look over here, as I said, with just 1 splitter, you do the job, versus before there was 3 splitters. So tip number 4, know that with your splitter and mix of splitters and merger, you can do anything you want. You probably want to do mostly manifold, but it's good to know that load balancing can actually be simpler. Before we move into the next tip, a quick talk about instant gaming, which is sponsoring the channel. Big thanks to Instant Gaming for doing this and also for providing amazing discount to everyone. If you go into the video description below, you find my sponsor link that will unlock crazy discount for you on new games, old games, and even pre-release, right? Pre-order Farming Simulator 25, for example, you can get 32%. And in particular, it's great to see that Satisfactory is actually 41% off right now in terms of dollars. If you chose euros, it may be slightly different, right? And also, depending on when you look at this video, it can be slightly different. But it's good to see that Satisfactory is there. This is a legit key. This is not a black market or gray market key. This is a legit key. What happens is that Instant Gaming buys them in bulk, so they get huge discount and then they can pass some of this discount to us. And by the way, if you do buy the game on Instant Gaming with my sponsor code, I also do get a very small percentage of the sale, so that helps the channel. Thank you again, and let's dive into more tips. Tip number 5, foundation. You should always use them. Whatever you do, use some foundation. I know at the beginning of the game I say you don't have them, but as soon as you unlock them, you should use them. But there's a couple of things to know about foundations. First of all, let's go into over here, you'll see the foundations. First of all, I do suggest to not really use foundation of 1 meter. Focus on 2 and 4 because of 2 reasons. The first one is that there's small alignment bugs, at least in the current version with foundation level 1 versus 2 and 4 align perfectly whatever you do. The second reason in particular why I like to use foundation level 4 is that it's easy to place a foundation level 4 and then later on you're gonna realize maybe you forgot something. For example, you wanted the foundation to look different at the top versus the bottom. So you wanted 2 different foundations. Then it's easy, to delete it and put a 2 meter on top and another 2 meter at the bottom. In this case, not so easy because is the wall, but you know what I mean. And then the other reason why sometimes it's great to have 4 meters like this when you make a mistake is that potentially, you're thinking, oh no, below I need a bit of space to put, a pipe or to put something. Then it's easy again to delete it, put a 1 meter on top. Now that you've aligned them, usually you'll be fine, but you have a bit of space to put, again, your pipe or whatever, versus if you put a 1 meter and you started building something else already below, then you won't have any space at all. So use more those 2 and 4 meters than the 1 meters. But the real tip is anytime you start a new base, anytime you want to put a foundation somewhere new, make sure that you press Ctrl. What is that gonna do? Well, let me press Ctrl. You'll see that the foundation slightly moved. What happened is that the foundation now got locked onto the world grid. While you don't really see it, the whole world is based on the grid. So what happens now that you've locked to the world grid is, let's assume I create now another base somewhere else. Let's assume here, for example, right? Obviously, your other base probably would be a lot further, but to make, this example, I'm making it just here. Now, because both of these are in the world grid, I will be, able very easily to connect them. You can see here it is. They have been connected. They are on the same grid. Versus on the other hand, if, I put this one over here, let's say, and this one there, then, unless I am super lucky, it is pretty much, impossible that those two will be easy to link. You can see it's not easy at all, right? So make sure that anytime you place a new foundation anywhere on the map, you press Ctrl first, and then you start building. Tip number 6, let's talk about the short bar, the shortcuts that you can see at the bottom. Now, right now it is number 1. This is the first tip, is there is actually multiple short bar. To go through them, press Alt and then turn, and you can see, there are a ton of them. The reality is usually I don't use that many, but definitely having one that you use really well is super important. Now, first of all, let me show you how to put anything on that bar. So you go into your menu, your buildable menu, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna hover over what you need. Let's assume I want a ramp level 1 in my hotbar. So I'm hovering over it, and then I'm just gonna press 1 on my keyboard. And here it is, it's been added, right? If you missed it, let me do it again. I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna put it on 1, or I'm gonna put it on 0. So look at the 0 at the bottom, here it is, that's changed, right? So that's easy, that's how you put it on the hotbar, and then obviously to use it, then that's super easy. You just press whatever button. So let's say for 1, that was the ramp, right? And then for 0, that was this strange corner one. So that's very easy and obviously very important to be able to build quickly. But the big mistake I see a lot, and that's why I wanted to talk about this one, is usually I see a lot of people, they have number one is, for example, gonna be their foundation. Then number two, they're gonna put all of their conveyor belt, like all 5, and maybe all 5 of the conveyors too, right? Because that makes 10. But the big mistake here is that now that means you have to change through those hot bars a lot, and you have to remember so many things. You have to remember that, you know, your belt Mark 5 maybe is the second one first, and then it's button number 5. Instead, what you should do, in my opinion, is you have one bar, number 1, which is the things that you use the most. What do you use the most? And then, in particular, you know, let's say for the belt and things like this, you should only put one of the mark. Though, again, the one that you use the most. For example, in my case right now, I'm using most of the Mark 5 because I'm at the end of the game. So if I click on 3, I get directly to the Mark 5 belt. And then it's very easy to go to a Mark 1, 2, or 3. I just press E. You press E and it will rotate through them, right? And similarly for my elevator, I only have one of them, it's a Mark 5, but I can get all of the other ones very quickly by pressing E. So use the short bar smartly, right? Put what you use the most, and then use E to rotate through this. And actually E, you know, works with many things, not just the mark things. For example, number 8 is my smelter, right? But if I press E, I get to the foundry. 9 is the constructor, but if I press E, I go to the assembler or to the manufacturer, right? So I can easily get access to all of the buildings with this. Tip number 7, let's talk about the different marks, you know, Mark 1 to Mark 5, and about upgrading. There are many different things you can upgrade. Of course, the main one that you know is going to be the belt. There's also your pipe, right? For example, Mark 1 pipe is only 300 per minute versus Mark 2 is 600, so you double. This is, by the way, often what you'll see is you'll tend to double. For example, for the belt, you'll go from 60 to 120, 120 to 270, so even a bit more than double, and then 240, so just slightly less than double, and then 780, this one doesn't double at all. I'm thinking this may actually change with version 1, or at least something will have to change, because right now, as you may know, for the pure nodes that are Mark 3 miners with overclocked, you don't even have a belt that can do it. So either we'll get Mark 6, Mark 7, or something will change there. But anyway, you have those multiple ones, right? There's a few other things you can also, by the way, upgrade. For example, the miners, right? Different marks. You have also your electric poles over here, right? Different mark. And there is also some other things you can upgrade, I'll show you in a second. So obviously, more often than not, as soon as you unlock a new tier, you're going to want to upgrade this, right? You're going to want to be able to transport more, to be able, you know, to have simpler factories, also just to take advantage of miners, right? Because again, we say even that miner Mark 1, you know, it's a pure one that is not even overclocked or anything, right? And it's just a miner Mark 1, but it's already making 120 per minute. So a belt Mark 1, that doesn't help, it's only 60. So of course, as soon as you can, you're gonna want to make this a Mark II like I did over here. But the thing you probably don't know is that to upgrade anything, you don't actually need to delete them. You can just, you know, this is a Mark II, right? I'm gonna press 3, now I have my Mark 5, right? You can just hover over it, and as long as I have the resources, in this case, you know, some Alcat sheets, here it is. I haven't deleted it or anything, just upgraded it. And it's the same for all of those things. So similarly for the miners, where am I miner? Over here, right? Let's take a miner Mark 3. I don't need to delete this miner Mark 1. I can just upgrade it like this, right? Done, as long as I have the resources, of course. Similarly for those power poles, right? If I want to put a, like this is a level 1, I put a level 2 on top of it, done. But there are two other ones that I'm guessing you may not even know. For your splitters or mergers, let's assume I have a splitter over here and I want to transform it into a smart splitter. You press Ctrl and here it is. It's been upgraded. I don't have to delete it or anything. I just can add it. Another one that many people don't know is with walls. Now let's assume here I have a basic wall 4 meter. If I again press Ctrl, I can transform it with a 1 into a 1 meter, or what is usually a bit more useful is if I go over here into a window or a door, you know, again, press Ctrl, and you don't have to delete it. You can just transform it into whatever you want. So yeah, upgrade or transform into one click. Don't delete. Tip number 8, you will always need more space than you expect. So as soon as you start unlocking, foundations and belts and things like this, start actually spacing things out. I know the first tip was put everything close together because you have to manually transport the resources, but as soon as you have the belt, you need to start spacing out, because I can guarantee you, even if you plan super well, you will always find that you forgot about one thing or another, you will want to expand in the future, etc. You'll be very glad to have left a lot of space. And also related to this is I suggest you very quickly move into vertical buildings rather than just fully expanding horizontally as much as possible. And if we take this example over here, right? This is taking quite a bit of space. This is basically the same buildings. I could have put them on top of each other, on 4 layers, and have basically the same sort of outputs, pretty much the same complexity in terms of organization, etc., but take a lot less space. Or in particular, what I really liked is usually to have one floor for each of the resource needed to build the ultimate thing. For example, in this case over here, right, we have first the foundries. They're going to take all of the iron ore, transform into iron ingot. And then this iron ingot is actually sent to the floor above. And with this floor above, we take the ingots and we transform them into rod. So start building vertically as soon as you can. Tip number 9, you need to understand a bit the math of the game. It's not complex at all. I'm not saying you need a master or anything like this, but still, it is important to pay attention to it. In particular, sort of what are the production times or the production ratios. If you look at this one, for example, over here, the iron ingots, we're taking 30 iron ore per minute to make 30 iron ingots. So it's a 1-to-1. It's pretty simple. So this one, okay, this is the basis. What's really important is the next step. Because let's assume we want to transform then these ingots into something else. In this case, iron rod. Now we see that we can take 15 iron ingots to make 15 iron rods. But the important thing is not so much that it's 1-to-1 here. It's the resource that's needed over here, 15 ingots, versus the resource that's produced over here, 13 ingots. Which tells me that basically, if my math is correct, with one of this smelter, you can have 2 of those constructors, right? 15 times 2, and then you know what you're gonna make. You're gonna make 15 times 2, so 30 iron rod, right? And then you go again to the next step, which is we're gonna take 10 of those iron rods to make 40 screws. So okay, now I know that I'm producing 30, and I can make, I can use 10 in one. So I can have 3 of them to use exactly the 30 that I'm making. And now with the 3 buildings that are making this recipe, that means 40 times 3, that's 120, right? 120, okay, I know that 120, for example, will not go into a belt level 1, right? This is a belt level 1, this is limited at 60, so that doesn't work. That is why there is 2 belts. But the important tip over here too is to understand you can change this. If you go over here, you will see the clock speed. You can actually change the production. You can underclock, making it less per minute, right? You can say, I'm gonna underclock it at 50%, or if you prefer, you can also decide exactly how much. So in this case, 50% is 15, obviously, but I can say, okay, I only want 10. Because for example, I only want one of these, right? This is 10 per minute. So let's assume I only want 10. You can do this, right? You put 10 over here. By the way, you can even do, if I remember correctly, you can do 1 divided by 3, and it's making the calculation also. So that's really great there. And you can also overclock. Now to overclock, you're gonna need power shards. You can put up to 3 power shards. You can put only 1 if you want. You can put 3, right? You can do it like this if you want to take 1 out, etc. The more you put, the more you're going to be able to overclock. So in this case, it's producing more, right? So you can move. This is 150% max, 200%, 250%. Why would you do this? Well, basically, underclocking will help you waste less electricity, because instead of, let's assume again that you only need 10 per minute, instead of having the thing run all the time, you only make it run when needed, which is 1/3 of the time. On the other hand, the overclock will definitely consume more electricity. The only reason you want overclock is 2 things. One is it helps you have less buildings. So let's assume you don't really have the space, then you can overclock. But more importantly for me, overclock is mostly for miners, because the number of miners on the map are limited, right? So the number of ore that I can produce is very limited. And on top of it, it's also the number of ore I can produce in one space, right? Because sure, there is ore all across the map, but you know, to have the logistic to bring the ore from this side to here, it's a lot more effort than to just say, let's overclock this one a bit. So overclock, I suggest you really use it for your mines, versus underclock is great to make sure that, you know, you don't waste electricity, and therefore your electricity, you know, if you look over here, your electricity becomes a lot flatter and you can predict it a lot better if you only use, you know, underclocking. Now, after number 10, I have more tips and surprises, but still, let's go to number 10. And to end, I did want to focus on the tip that may not be that important in the first few hours of the game, but it will definitely be critical if you ever want to get to the end. You won't survive, you won't get to the end, you won't burn out if you don't start to plan a bit. Especially after, let's say, tier 3, tier 4, you need to start planning. What does that mean? Well, first of all, there is a couple of tools that will help you. I will put them in the video description below, but let me show you quickly. First of all, one that I love is the interactive map. Here, you'll be able, you know, to say, okay, I want to see where are all of the limestone nodes, or maybe only the pure nodes. Where are they? Or maybe where is there some limestone and some iron ore and copper, because, you know, I need to make a factory that requires those three things. So for example, over here, that seems pretty good, or a starting location over there, or maybe there, right? So this is really a great one. And as you see, you know, there's obviously all of the resources and resource wells, but there's also the artifacts, the collectible, like our hard drives, you know, they can be quite hard to find. So you can know where they are. Some may say it's a bit of a cheat. I do think, again, at the beginning of the game, you shouldn't be using this, but at some point, it's like you have to. You can't plan without something like this. Second, the Satisfactory wiki, you know, any question you may have, you can find the answer there. It can be, again, really important to plan, for example, on what is going to be needed for phase 4 of the space elevator. You know, you can see all of the resources needed there. You can start planning for this. There is an onboard wiki, or part of the wiki. If you press N, you'll be able to search for whatever you want. So let's say, for example, I want to find, you know, how to make magnetic field generators. So I search for it, and then it shows me, okay, magnetic field generator, it is made in a manufacturer. This is the recipe. I can add it to my to-do list. I see the production rate and a few other things. While I'm speaking about N, by the way, you can also do math here. So let's assume, you know, you find out you need to produce 300 of a certain resource, and you know that each building can produce 25, so you can quickly make the math, right? Then I know I need 12 of those assemblers, for example. Speaking about math, I do love a bit of an Excel, but there are some calculators online too, where you can do things like, for example, let me say I want, you know, 10 modular frames. Right? That's the only thing I said. I want 10 modular frames, and then automatically the calculator said, okay, to do 10 modular frames, you need all of this. You know, you need, at the end of the day, 6.7 blenders, but for those 6.7 blenders, you know, in terms of resources, you're going to need aluminum casing, nitrogen, and heavy modular frames. And so to do the aluminum casing, you're going to need 8.4 constructor. To do those constructors, or not the constructors themselves, but, you know, the resources needed in those constructors is going to be the aluminum ingots, and that means you're going to need 12.5 foundry, etc., etc. So there is some calculators out there, but again, an Excel can also work if you have the patience. Now, when you see something like this, you may be overwhelmed. You may feel like, okay, this is just too much. There's too many things, or it's going to take me a long time to do this. At that point, I think it's very important to break things down into manageable pieces, and in particular also into tasks. Let me show you an example of this. And while I think you really need to do it a lot at the end of the game, you can do it from the start. So this was, for example, in episode 2 of my series. So right at the start, and I wanted to do a couple of things. I wanted to first expand my iron plate production. Then I wanted to unlock the base foundation and start making a base foundation, so I can build then the space elevator and do a couple of tier 2 milestones. And even when you want to build a small factory that has 2 floors, right? You could have a first step that is floor 1, a second step that is floor 2. Or you could have a first step that is, I need to have 10 smelters, right? And the second step that is, I need to have 5 constructors, right? Try to break the problem down into manageable pieces. That's basically the point. And what's really cool too in this game is you can then say, you know, okay, how many constructors do I need? You know, you put the number, how many smelters, etc. And you will see this over here, right? It does say basically I need 3 constructors, 2 smelters, 1 storage containers, 95 foundation. And it also shows me how much resources do I need. Right, it says, for example, I need 475 of concrete, I need 200 iron plates, etc., to be able to build those things here. And I can see, do I have enough or not? In this case, I have enough for all of them. You know, I have 825 concrete, I only need 475, for example, etc. Right? If I were to put, you know, a lot more, let's say, you know, I'm gonna put 300 here. Obviously, now I don't have enough anymore. Right? So it also again shows you, are you prepared? Do you have what you need? And then along the way, you know, let's say, for example, I said 1 storage container. Right? So I'm going to build 1 storage container. Now it doesn't say storage container anymore, right? Because I built it. So again, I'm breaking things down, but I also have a clear plan. I can see if I'm prepared, and then I can execute the plan. So really cool. Definitely do use this. Now, before the bonus tips and also a surprise at the end, please smash the like button. It took me a long time to prepare this video. First bonus tip, if you click on the middle button of your mouse, you're going to copy the building you're looking at. Be it a constructor, a merger, whatever it is, it's going to copy it. So that is great to construct quickly. The only thing though is for constructors, assemblers, etc., it is not going to copy the recipe. As you can see, there is no recipe here. If you use Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V, you're going to basically copy and paste those settings. So now those settings have been included, the recipe, and even, by the way, if I had a different clock speed, this would have also been copied. So that's a really powerful one. Another quick tip is I often see people asking me in the comments, how do you make those perfect 90-degree angle turns? So let me show you that. To make it simple, you know, I'm gonna put 2 buildings, 2 mergers like this. It could be anything. It could be a constructor, it could be whatever you want. And that works also for pipes, by the way. So the way to do this is you're gonna start at one point, and you're going to go all the way until you see this green line. This means this is a line, right? Then you're going to go 2 steps back. 1, 2. And this is now the perfect 90-degree angle. So again, just go all the way until you see the green line, and then 2 steps back. 1, 2. And last but not least, because this is something it took me a long time to discover, many times, it will probably happen many times that you need to transport one resource from either your inventory to a storage, from a storage to inventory, from, you know, your inventory to a building, or those type of things. Now, you can definitely do it manually like I just did over here, but usually you're going to want to do it many times. So what you can do is you do Control, and then you do left click, and then all of the resources that are similar to the one you know, you're clicking on will move at once. And this, by the way, also works for the deleting. So if I take one and I press Control while putting it over here, all of them are destroyed. This is the one, you know, I found out what this one very quickly, but this one, it took me a long time to find out. So here it is, ladies and gents, a lot of tips. I hope you feel a lot more equipped, you know, to play Satisfactory. But I do have a big surprise for you now. On my channel, I have a full series going from start to finish, and you can actually get the save at the point where I finished it, where, you know, all of the resources have been automated, where we have completed phase 4. So if you want, you know, to get to the end game, to be able to have a world that is already pretty developed that you can build on, you can get this save. The only thing you have to do is become either a Patreon or a YouTube member on my channel, and then you'll get access to a special role on Discord, and you'll find this save there. Big thanks again for watching this video. Please smash that button, and I hope to see you next time.